Only 3 minutes left, Archangel Michael says. Chosen one, when you get rich, tell no one. It is the moment, the specific electric relief-flooded moment when things finally go right. When the shift you have been praying for, working toward, and maintaining faith in through seasons that tested every dimension of that faith, begins to materialize in the visible dimension of your life. And in that moment something happens that is so human, so understandable, so completely natural that almost no one warns you about it until after it has already cost you something significant. You want to tell someone, not because you are boastful, not because you want to flaunt what is arriving, but because the relief of it, the specific bone-deep relief of a season finally shifting, wants to be witnessed, wants to be shared, wants to be brought out of the private interior where you have been carrying the weight of it and into the light of other people's knowing. And in most cases, that impulse, however natural, however completely human, is the beginning of the undoing. Today I want to tell you something that the wisest voices across history, across spiritual tradition, across the observable patterns of people who build and sustain significant wealth, have consistently understood and consistently practiced. When the wealth comes, say nothing. Not yet. Not until what has arrived is established enough to withstand the weight of being known. This is the wisdom this conversation was sent to deliver, and it is more significant than it initially sounds. Let me describe something that I believe has been part of your story either recently or in the not-too-distant past. You received something, a breakthrough, an opportunity, a shift in your financial situation, a door that opened in a direction you had been believing for. It was real. It was significant. And in the fullness of the relief and the gratitude of it, you shared it. Not recklessly, not with everyone, with the people you trusted most, the ones whose responses mattered to you, the ones whose celebration you wanted to be part of the experience of receiving what had finally arrived. And something happened in the aftermath of the sharing that you did not fully anticipate. Some responses were not quite what you expected. Some people's celebration felt thin, present in form, slightly hollow in substance. Some questions were asked that felt less like curiosity and more like assessment. Some relationships shifted in subtle ways that you noticed but could not fully articulate. Some of the energy around what was arriving became complicated in ways it had not been when it was still private. And at some point, perhaps gradually, perhaps in a specific moment of clarity, you felt the momentum of what was building begin to lose something. Not the thing itself necessarily, but the quality of space around it. The protected, quiet, rooted in faith energy that had been present while it was still developing in private. That experience, however, it specifically showed up in your story, is what this conversation is about. And the wisdom it is pointing toward is not about becoming secretive or distrustful or closed. It is about understanding something fundamental about how breakthroughs grow and what they need in their early stages to develop into the full, established, sustainable reality they were designed to become. Every significant thing has a vulnerable stage. Wealth is no different. There is a principle visible in every domain of growth, biological, financial, relational, spiritual, that applies with equal force to financial breakthrough. New growth is always the most vulnerable stage, not because it is weak in its essence, because it has not yet developed the structural integrity that maturity brings. The root system is not yet deep enough to withstand significant external pressure. The foundation is not yet solid enough to support the weight of full public exposure. A seedling that has just broken through soil has the full genetic potential of the mature tree it will become. But in its early stage, a pressure that the mature tree would absorb without notice can destroy it entirely. Financial breakthrough works the same way. The early stage, when the shift has begun but is not yet fully established, when the opportunity is real but not yet developed into the sustainable reality it is moving toward, is the stage that requires the most protection. Announcement removes that protection. It exposes the tender, early breakthrough to the full weight of other people's responses, their doubt, their expectations, their complicated feelings about your changing circumstances before the breakthrough is established enough to withstand those responses without being affected by them. Silence is not smallness. It is the specific wisdom-expressing protection of something precious in its most vulnerable stage. And protecting it through that stage is what allows it to become the established, mature, sustainable reality it was always designed to be. The energy people bring to your wealth is not always aligned with your well-being. I want to say this with the honesty it deserves and the compassion it requires, because the people I am describing are not villains. They are human beings. When you receive a financial breakthrough, the people around you, the ones who love you genuinely, the ones who have been part of your story through the difficult seasons, bring their own complete interior worlds to the information, their own relationship with money, their own financial fears, their own unmet desires, their own complicated feelings about what your advancement means for the dynamic of the relationship, for the equilibrium that has existed between you, for the sense of shared struggle that has sometimes been part of what connected you. All of that, the full, complicated, entirely human interior that every person carries, responds to the news of you. Breakthrough. And even in people whose love for you is completely genuine, that response is not always purely celebratory. It does not make them bad people. It makes them people. And the energy that their complicated response introduces into your tender breakthrough, even without malicious intent, even with love present alongside the complexity, can create friction in the development process that silence would have entirely prevented. You are not protecting yourself from them by staying quiet. You are protecting the breakthrough from something it is not yet sturdy enough to navigate, and protecting them from the complicated feelings that the announcement would surface before the relationship has had time to adjust to your changing circumstances. Silence is an act of love, for the breakthrough and for the people around you. Premature announcement creates obligations that belong in a later season. Here is a practical dimension of financial silence that most conversations about wealth miss entirely, and that has significant consequences when it is not understood in advance. When you tell people that your financial situation is improving, even carefully, even with appropriate discretion about the details, you shift their orientation toward you in ways that create obligations. The friend who has been struggling financially hears your announcement and begins, reasonably, to recalibrate their expectations of what is possible in the relationship. The family member who has been carrying a need begins to hope, naturally and understandably, that your changed circumstances might intersect with their situation. The acquaintance who has been waiting for the right moment to ask for something finds that your announcement provides exactly the permission they needed. None of these people are doing anything wrong. Their responses are completely understandable, but they are creating demands on a breakthrough that has not yet fully established itself, demands that, if honored prematurely, can redirect the flow of increase before it has had sufficient time to develop the momentum that multiplication requires. Every request that comes in ahead of the establishment of the blessing redirects resources that were meant to compound first. Every obligation created by premature announcement consumes bandwidth, financial, emotional, relational, that the early breakthrough needs for its own development. Silence buys the time and space that development requires, and development allowed to complete produces the established reality from which genuine generosity is sustainable, rather than the premature depletion of something that had not yet reached its full form. What grows in the dark roots deeper before it reaches the light. There is a reason that the most significant things in the natural world, the deepest roots, the most enduring structures, the foundations that support the largest and most lasting growth, develop in the hidden, underground, invisible to the eye dimension before they become visible above the surface. The root goes deeper in the dark because there is no invitation to perform, no audience watching its progress, no pressure to appear more developed than it actually is. Just the quiet, patient, unhurried work of growing toward what it needs, toward water, toward nutrients, toward the depth that will eventually support the weight of what grows above. Financial breakthrough that develops in the quiet of appropriate silence grows roots in the same way, without the performance pressure of people watching its development, without the need to appear more established than it actually is, without the energy spent managing perceptions that could have been spent deepening the foundation. The roots that develop in the quiet are what make the eventual visible growth sustainable. The breakthrough that was protected through its early stages is the one that becomes the established, multiply-capable reality, rather than the impressive but shallow growth that collapses under the weight of its own visibility. Let yours root in the quiet. The visible growth will come, and when it does, it will be supported by a depth that the watching eyes never witnessed developing, and that makes all the difference in what it can eventually sustain. The test of wealth is character, and character is revealed in silence. Here is a truth about the relationship between wealth and character that the materialistic framing of most financial conversations consistently misses. The wealth that a person builds and sustains over time is almost always proportional to the character that person has developed, not their talent, not their intelligence, not even their effort alone, but the specific depth of character that determines how they handle money when they have it, how they make decisions under the pressure of having it, and how they maintain integrity when the options that significant resources provide include many that integrity would not endorse. And character, genuine, tested, reliable character, is developed and revealed most clearly in the quiet moments, not in the public ones, not in the moments of acknowledged success or observed virtue. In the private moments when no one is watching and the choice between integrity and expedience is made without an audience. The decision to stay quiet about your breakthrough when the impulse to announce is strong and the social reward for announcing would be immediate is itself a character test. It is the practice of delayed gratification applied to social currency rather than financial currency. It is the demonstration that you can hold what is valuable without immediately seeking the validation of having others know you hold it. That capacity, the ability to have without needing the knowing of it to be external, is one of the character qualities that wealth at significant levels requires of its stewards, and practicing it now, in this specific form, is one of the most direct ways available to develop it. Spiritual protection is real, and silence is one of its mechanisms. I want to address a dimension of this truth that goes beyond the psychological and the practical, because for the chosen person, the spiritual dimension of financial breakthrough is as real and as consequential as any other. There are spiritual forces that oppose the establishment of divinely directed financial provision in the lives of people who carry genuine purpose. This is not paranoia, it is the consistent testimony of every spiritual tradition across every culture and every era of human history. The opposition is real. It is not always dramatic. It often works through entirely ordinary channels, through the doubt of well-meaning people, through the expectations that announcement creates, through the energy that complicated human responses introduce into vulnerable developmental spaces. Silence removes the announcement that gives those channels their access. It keeps the breakthrough in the protected space of private development where the spiritual opposition cannot leverage the ordinary complications of human response to interfere with what is being built. This is not fearful thinking. It is the specific faith-based wisdom of someone who understands that what they are building carries significance beyond their own personal benefit, and that protecting it through the early stages is an act of stewardship rather than timidity. Guard what is being built, not because you are afraid, because you are wise enough to understand that the protection of significant things during their vulnerable stages is part of the responsibility that receiving them entails. Your circle will naturally expand when the wealth is established. Let it happen then. One of the concerns that the instruction to stay quiet can produce is the sense that silence requires a permanent contraction of the relational circle, that choosing not to share means choosing to carry the journey alone indefinitely. That is not what this instruction means, and I want to address it clearly because the concern is legitimate. Your circle is going to expand, significantly, naturally, at the right time. When the breakthrough is established enough to be shared without risk of the sharing disrupting the development. When the wealth is rooted deeply enough that the weight of people knowing cannot destabilize what has been built. At that point, the point of genuine establishment rather than early development, the expansion of the circle is not just appropriate. It is one of the most meaningful experiences available to a person who has carried a difficult season privately and can now bring people into the fullness of what that season produced. The generosity of sharing the established breakthrough, the testimony, the resources, the access, the demonstrated possibility is more powerful and more impactful than any premature sharing of the early development would have been. Because what is shared from a position of establishment carries a weight and a credibility that what is shared from a position of early development cannot. Wait for the establishment, and then share with the fullness that the establishment makes possible. What you do with the first portion determines what happens to the rest. This truth is both spiritually and practically grounded, and I want to present both dimensions because both are real and both matter. The first portion of any significant financial breakthrough, the initial increase, the first meaningful arrival of provision at a new level, is the most important portion, not because of its size, because of what it signals about the recipient's character, values, and relationship with what they have received. What you do with the first portion before the social pressure of people knowing creates external expectations about what you should do with it is the clearest available signal of whether the wealth has changed you or whether you have remained at the level of character exactly who you were before it arrived. Give a portion of it, before the spending, before the investment, before any other deployment. Give, not to be seen giving, privately, specifically, from the genuine gratitude of someone who understands that the provision that has arrived did not originate entirely in their own effort and deserves to be honored by flowing some of it forward. That first giving, quiet, private, an act between you and the source of all provision, establishes the relationship between you and the wealth that will determine how the rest of it behaves in your hands. It is the spiritual act that says, "This has not made me forget who gave it, and I will honor the giving by giving forward," and then invest the next portion. Not in lifestyle display, in the foundation of what is being built, in the infrastructure, the knowledge, the relationships, the systems that will allow the first arrival to become the beginning of something rather than a moment. The lifestyle change should trail the wealth establishment, not lead it. This is the practical truth that most financial breakthrough content skips, and that its skipping is part of why the pattern of receive and lose is so common in the lives of people who receive significant financial increase. The impulse, when wealth arrives, is to let the life reflect the wealth immediately. The visible markers of changed circumstances, the upgraded vehicle, the better address, the changed quality of spending are attractive not just because they represent genuine improvement, but because they communicate the change to the world without requiring explicit announcement. They are, in a sense, the announcement made material, and they carry exactly the same risks that explicit announcement carries plus additional ones. Lifestyle display based on early-stage wealth creates a standard of living that the wealth must now sustain rather than develop. It commits resources that should be compounding to the maintenance of an image. It invites the social complexity that follows visible change before the foundation is solid. Let the lifestyle trail the wealth. Significantly, not out of deprivation, enjoy what genuinely improves your quality of life in ways that are sustainable and meaningful, but resist the impulse to display the change before the change is fully established. The most durable builders of significant wealth are, almost universally, people whose inner financial reality exceeded their outer financial expression for extended periods, who allowed the roots to grow far deeper than the surface suggested before letting the visible growth match the internal development. Practice that discipline now, and watch how the restraint compounds into something the display would have spent. When you eventually speak, let your results be the announcement, the final truth, the one that reframes the entire instruction of this conversation from temporary restraint into permanent wisdom. The most powerful announcement of financial breakthrough is not verbal. It is not a post, a conversation, a moment of sharing that communicates to the people in your life that things have changed. It is the undeniable, visible, impossible to overlook reality of a life that has been genuinely, sustainably, lastingly transformed. The kind that does not require explanation because it is self-evident. The kind that people observe over time and recognize as real rather than performed. The kind that speaks louder than any verbal announcement because it has been established rather than declared. When the results speak, when the transformation is visible in the quality of your decisions, the nature of your relationships, the scope of your impact, the depth of your generosity, the sustained nature of the wealth, rather than its temporary arrival, no announcement is necessary. And the silence you maintained in the early stages is what made those results possible, because the resources you did not spend on display were compounding into foundation. Because the energy you did not spend managing perceptions was invested in building what the perceptions would eventually, accurately, reflect. Let the results speak. They will. In time and with the full authority of what is real rather than what is performed. And when they do, when your life is the announcement that your silence made possible, you will understand, with a clarity that no instruction could have produced in advance, exactly why the wisdom was worth every moment of the restraint it required. Before this conversation ends, I want to say something directly and without the softening that would make it easier to hear, but less useful in the applying. The wealth that is coming toward your life, or that has recently begun arriving, is significant. Not primarily in the dollar amount, in the purpose it is designed to resource, and the people it is designed to serve through you. And because it is significant, because it carries within it the seed of something that extends beyond your personal benefit into the lives of people who need what your breakthrough makes possible, it deserves the specific, deliberate, wisdom-guided handling that significant things always require. That handling begins with silence, quiet, the specific, protected, faith-expressing quiet of someone who has received something precious and has chosen to steward it with the care that its significance warrants, rather than seeking the immediate social validation that announcing it would provide. I understand the impulse. The season you have been through has been long and costly and carried largely in private. The relief of the breakthrough is real. The desire to let people know that the season is changing, that the faith was justified, that the persistence was not foolish, that the long wait is producing something real, is completely understandable and not at all shameful. But the wisdom available to you in this moment, the specific, time-tested, consistently observed wisdom of people who have received significant wealth and kept it, says, wait, let it root, let it establish, let the early development complete in the protected quiet where development does its best work. Let the foundation become solid before the structure becomes visible. Let the roots go deeper than anyone watching can see. And then when the establishment is real, when the foundation is solid, when what has been built in the quiet is ready for the light it was always moving toward, bring it forward with the full confidence and the full generosity of someone who stewarded it well. That person, the one who protected what was precious, who waited with wisdom, who allowed the quiet to do its necessary work, is the person who gets to share the fullness of what the breakthrough eventually produces. Not just the announcement of it, the fruit of it, the compounded, established, genuinely transformative fruit of a breakthrough that was given the time and the protection it needed to become everything it was designed to be. You were chosen for this, not just for the receiving, for the stewarding, for the specific, wisdom-expressing, character-revealing responsibility of handling what has been entrusted to you in a way that honors both the source and the purpose. Handle it wisely, in the quiet, with patience, with the full awareness that what you are protecting in the silence is worth every day of the restraint. And watch what the silence builds. If this conversation reached something real in you today, if the wisdom of it landed with the specific weight of something you needed to hear at exactly this moment, subscribe. Every week we bring you the kind of deep, honest, spiritually and practically grounded truth that chosen people need at the moments that actually matter. The wealth is coming. The wisdom to protect it is now yours. Stay quiet, stay wise, and let what you build in the silence speak louder than anything you could have announced.